and welcome to the Apostolic Pentecostal Church channel. The 2024 iGrow season has arrived, and we are thrilled to have you with us. At APC, we have amazing teachers ready to share the joy of the gospel. If today's lesson resonates with you, spread the love by sharing this episode with a friend or on your socials. Dive deeper into our community at theapc.org or follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Now, grab your favorite latte and let's dive into the lesson together.
Well, I thank you for coming. I've been excited to teach this because I've been talking to Pastor about this for years. This is something I've taught in a lot of different ways for a lot of different things. And it's really, I'm going to say up front, this is really more of a 4-hour half-day workshop than an hour. There's a lot you could cover. So I'm going to kind of breeze by some of the concepts in a way, but because I want us to be able to try some things out. All right, it's really like doing it is really where you learn it. But we're going to talk about eliciting motivation for salvation, and just some to help you talk to others about Jesus, helping us be more effective in our evangelistic efforts. We'll start with some scripture. We'll go Matthew 28, 19 and 20. Familiar to most of us. If you've been in church more than a couple of months, you've probably run across this one. Jesus said to his disciples to go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Amen. So this was the great commandment that Jesus gave to his disciples. And so I ask you tonight, are you his disciple? Anybody here his disciple?
Yes.
Are we his disciples?
Yes.
Right. And second, and I didn't move us forward. Did I not do? Oh, I know why. Why isn't it? I don't know what I'm doing with my. Why isn't it moving forward?
Did you use the arrow?
No. Resume there, that's why. It's being a little weird on me. I don't know why it's not going forward. Oh, that wasn't what we wanted. Apologize. If I pulled up the right one, yeah, here we go. All right. That looks more right. All right. I don't know why it was like that. But so 2 Corinthians 5:20 Paul says, now then we are ambassadors for Christ, as though God were pleading through us. As though God were pleading through us. We're his ambassadors. We implore you on Christ's behalf, right? Be reconciled to God. That's Paul is instructing believers that we're to be ambassadors, and that means the Great Commission is for us. And we're to go out and implore people to be reconciled to God. You're in this class tonight, I kind of guess you already know those things, but what are some things that you've tried? Anybody tried? Have you ever tried to reach anybody, bring anybody in? What have you tried? Here's some. I looked this up. This is according to Wikipedia, so you know it's true, right? These are some different kind of. They had others, but these were ones I recognize. You know, open air preaching. Just go and start preaching somewhere. Trickle down evangelism. I'm not sure exactly. I think that's like you're just going to get it by osmosis, or maybe your children get it because you're in church. Door to door, right? Door knocking, right? Evangelizing can happen through a sermon, and I won't go through all of them. Lifestyle evangelism, how you live your life, right? That's a witness. Friendship, reaching your friends, things like that. Handing out tracts. These are things, televangelism, radio, internet, it's all kind of the same. So any others I missed, any others you've tried that I didn't catch in our list? I want to ask, why aren't we more successful? We got all these methods. This is the instruction from God. Why aren't we more successful? Well, because if we have the gospel message that everyone needs, why don't more respond and act to it? Why don't they respond? First thing I want to say is, our success should be measured in our obedience, right? If we're following that scripture we just heard, if I'm imploring somebody to be reconciled to God, that's all it says. It doesn't say make sure they make it. Right? So our job is to share. We have to always remember that our job is to share the gospel. Salvation is a work of the Spirit. I can't save anybody.
Right.
And God has to move on you. Right? We all had that experience at some point. No matter whether you grew up in church or not, God moved on you at some point. It wasn't just because somebody invited you. Right? But we're to open the door. We're supposed to help kind of make that introduction. And so, again, salvation is a work of the Spirit in those who believe. It's not a product of our flesh. It's not a work of our flesh. And so we have to be careful. And the reason I'm bringing that up is it's easy to get caught up in a numbers game. Well, Aaron baptized, he had 5 people baptized this month, and Amen. I didn't get anybody. And so, number one, we should all be rejoiced. We're all on the same team, right? But it's easy to start saying, well, I'm not doing very well. We've been having Bible study at the pantry for 6 months, and nobody's come in the door, right? And well, we're sharing the gospel. If they end up being saved, awesome. But we're sharing the gospel. And so it's because the numbers are all right. It's okay to make. I was actually reading Pastor's latest favorite book is Atomic Habits, and I love that he reminded that you can get caught up in your measurement, and the measurement becomes your why, and you start getting frustrated, rather than doing it because remembering why you're doing it and just having a marker. Okay, but we also, one of the other things is we come with our own agenda. It's our agenda for them to be saved.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
And we forget that that's not their agenda. It's so easy, right? Well, why wouldn't you want to be saved, right? But we have to understand that and this is sort of a foundational principle, maybe the take-home message, is we have to understand that other person's perspective first and meet them where they're at. Help them see that God's agenda is for them. And guard against our letting our priorities outpace our disciples' priorities. Okay? That's so we get ahead of where they're at, and you get frustrated. And so, is salvation on their mind, or is that my agenda, or is it theirs? Right. And I just want to say there's a better way. And before I think here's where I'm going to have you help me, Aaron. So I'm your neighbor. You've known me for a while. We've had dinner at each other's house. We've gotten to know each other pretty well. And you want me to come to church.
Yeah.
Go.
Hey, would you be interested in coming to a Sunday or a Wednesday night service with me?
No, I'm not into that stuff.
Would you tell me why you're probably not interested in being part of our church or just visiting our church?
I don't think I really believe any of that, man.
Okay. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, but can you tell me why?
It's just not what I believe.
Okay, what do you believe?
I just think we're worm food and that's it. Okay. You guys, the preachers are just out for your money. And so, you see, we're failing. I asked Aaron to do that because I didn't do that to embarrass him or anything like that. But this is what a lot of these conversations sound like, right?
Absolutely. But my next question was I bet I can guarantee you that if you come, I can show you an experience that I've had.
Okay.
That will show you that this isn't for all for nothing. Right. There's something to this.
Okay. And that's not bad. Go ahead.
I think before inviting, because I've invited so many people to church, but I think before even getting there, you have to build a relationship with them. Because
You're
people get
all
so
over my
frustrated.
lesson right there.
They
Yeah.
get so frustrated that all you want is for them to show up to church.
Yeah.
And they want to know that you care.
And again, that's your agenda.
Yeah.
Right? It's your agenda to get them to church. That's not my agenda. If I'm in the neighbor in this, no, I just want to, mow my lawn and have you leave me alone.
Yeah.
Right? Like So there's some biblical examples. We just talked about one in the connection class. One of my favorites. Like if you want to look at, what does outreach look like? It's John chapter 4. The woman at the well. I love that. I'm not going to take time to go into these in depth, but Jesus met this woman at her physical need. He built a relationship. He did it quickly. It doesn't have to take a year.
Right.
It might. I don't want to oversell anything I'm saying tonight, but it's building the relationship. Like he did that first. He said, "Oh, you need some water," and he began. And I love that there's this progressive understanding of who he is, right? But and he built a relationship, and then he revealed who he was in a way she could understand, and he showed her the spiritual need. Okay, and sometimes that's going to take. I'm not Jesus. That might take more than 10 minutes.
Right.
Okay, so but another one I was, and there's many examples. I just pulled 3 that came to my mind. Acts 17, 16 through 32. That's Paul at Athens, and I like that one too. This is where he meets the Greeks, and he says, "I notice you have this temple to an unknown God." Let me tell you, I think I know who that is. Right? He met them at a place because he could have come in and said, "This pagan stuff you guys believe is all wrong. That's fake. That's false. That's not real. Let me tell you what's real." And they probably would have hung him.
Yeah.
Okay? They would have run him out of town.
Yeah. Right?
And so he just came and said, "Hey, you guys have some beliefs? That's great. I think I got something that I can share with you." And he didn't, and he just brought them along. Did everybody follow? Did they all jump on board? No. And that's going to happen, right? We need to realize you're not going to bat 1,000 at this. We want to, but even Jesus didn't do that, right? So, he preached to at least 5,000 and ended up with 12. That's my measuring stick for me. If I can get 12 out of 5,000, I'm doing as good as Jesus. That's the way I look at it. So 1 Corinthians 9, chapter 9, 19 through 23. I'm going to read that. This is Paul again. He says, "For though I am free from all men, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win the more. And to the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might win Jews. To those who are under the law, as under the law, that I might win those under the law. To those without the law, as without the law, not being without law towards God, but under law toward Christ, that I might win those without law. To the weak I became as weak, that I might win the weak. I become all things to all, that I might by all save some. Now I do this for the gospel's sake, that I may be partaker of it with you." He used things that he had in common, right, to build that relationship. He didn't betray who he was. He wasn't faking it. But he said, he's like, we identify. We have some way that we can connect.
Talk to them in their language.
Yeah, he met them where they were at. Yeah, you're like, "You're weak? Hey, I'm weak too.
Yeah.
You're a Jew? I'm a Jew too."
Yeah.
Like, we've got something to talk about. Right? Aaron comes to me and says, "Hey, let's talk about golf." I'm going to be like, "Okay."
Your conversation can only go so far.
Right.
But if I come to you, if you come to me and say, "Let's talk about psychology," about
Right.
Yeah, I can only talk about so much.
Right.
Me being crazy.
What's that?
There was a great example of that happened yesterday. I have a couple of friends out in Joliet that were out playing frisbee golf. They've come and visited my old church. They've met everybody, liked it, but they don't want to do the church thing. They believe in God, don't want to do the church thing. It's too structured. They're out frisbee golfing yesterday, and he calls me and says, "I think the youth group from Life Church is here." His buddy's truck got stuck in the mud.
Mm-hmm.
They helped him pull the truck out. Asked if they wanted to play frisbee golf. Didn't invite him to church. Got their numbers to meet him on Sunday after church to play frisbee golf with them. And I said, that is how God works.
Yeah.
And it was
Exactly.
such an awesome thing. And they were so blown away that the first thing wasn't that they were trying to get him to go to church. They want to hang out with them. and get to know them.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
thought that was so awesome.
Yeah, well, we want to go out and show love, right? If we just love on people, the doors will, and it's amazing when you stop pressing how God just opens the doors. You don't have to kick them to open. You really don't. But you do need to knock.
But there are those rare experiences, though, like when Paul and Silas from the jail, and the jailer's going to fall on his sword, and he says, "Whoa, hold up, we're all still here."
Yeah.
The jailer then came and was like, "I need to know."
Sure,
Like, there's those rare,
that's somebody that already, somebody that already has that, and we're going to get there.
And I think that's us being on our toes, ready for that moment, but also preparing for the moment that she's talking about. Is, you know,
So
relationship.
we're going to get there. So there is a progression, and we're jumping a little ahead, but
Sorry.
That's all right. No, it's good. So just a couple more modern examples I want. If you haven't ever read it, I think this is it's a pretty simple model, but I really think it inspires you to go out. It's Stan Gleason, follow the lead. Basically he says, make a friend, Darren said it on Sunday, make a friend, and then make a disciple, right? And then disciples make disciples, and we multiply. We're not adding, we're multiplying. And I wanted to share this too. We were at Winter Fire Conference a couple weeks ago, and David Bernard preached, and he preached such a simple message, but it was beautiful and awesome. He said, we have an experience that he was talking about the events in Acts chapter 2, and he says, we have an experience you can hear, and you can see, and you can experience it for yourself. And I'm like, that's an awesome, man. I'm like, that's pretty simple. You don't need to get flowery or technical. Hey, I got something you can, sort of what you were saying earlier. You can see it, you can hear it, and you can experience it for yourself.
Because that's what separates us in our doctrine from all the other.
Certainly, and so this is not really part of what I want to talk about tonight, because this is really about how to have certain conversations. But absolutely, this has been over the last year. I would say I've run across. There's been a sort of thread, of stuff you hear preached to you. We need to be bold about the oneness of God, baptism in Jesus' name, and receiving the Holy Ghost. That people need to hear that, but it depends on who you're talking to. Yes, and where. You lead. You lead. If you're leading with speaking in tongues, you may lose a lot of people quickly. Right. If that's the first thing you talk about and they don't know anything, that might throw some people. I know it kind of threw me when I came into church. Okay, and because I didn't know anything.
Right.
And I'm like, well, that's kind of different. I don't know. So here, when conversion is hard, I want to make this case. It's not because there's a lack of information. A lot of times we throw a lot of information at people, and we think if we just give them enough info, that's usually not the case. It's not because they're lazy. It's not because they're just oppositional. It's not because they're in denial. It's not resistance. Okay, there's all kinds of things we try to make it about, and I don't think it's really about any of those things. Our language really matters, and in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, Paul says, "And I, brethren, when I came to you, did not come with excellence of speech." In some version, I think it's King James, says persuasive speech. I think I'm trying to persuade. He was trying to persuade, but I wasn't using all this persuasive speech. Or of wisdom, declaring to you the testimony of God, for I determined not to know anything among you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified. I was with you in weakness, in fear, and in much trembling. So there, you see, I was with you, right? He was passionate. He had real emotion going on, because you can't fake this.
Right.
And he said, "And my speech and my preaching were not with persuasive words of human wisdom, but in demonstration of spirit and of power, that your faith should not be in the wisdom of men, but in the power of God." So he certainly reminds us here of the importance of the demonstration of the Spirit and of power. And we should be seeking for those opportunities for that. So what does demonstration of the Spirit mean? That means you guys touched on it before. You already know all this. It's the fruit of the Spirit on display. Right. Love, peace, joy, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, right? All that stuff needs to be on display. People are going to say this. That person's going to know there's something different. And if you're talking to me and you're asking me to come to church, and I know you really love me, I'm going to be more willing to hear that. because I think you don't just have your agenda in mind. What does demonstration of the power mean? That means the gifts of the Spirit in action. Now, I'm not here to talk about all that, but I don't want to forget those. But let's not gloss over that Paul is also saying he didn't win people with just convincing speech. Right. But in saying that, so I'm not contradicting myself. You don't have to have some. You're not trying to coerce people or impress people or overflow them with information. Sometimes it's just how you're talking. That's what I'm trying to talk about tonight. It's how you're talking. It's not so much what you're saying, but how you're doing it.
But he also spoke of humility in that as well.
Yes.
Because he mentioned to accept Jesus Christ and him crucified. He was like, once I realized that he was the Messiah, my life changed.
Yes. So they did an experiment. This was a motivation experiment. They parked some people out front. You ever see these charities out in front of the grocery store or whatever, like, hey, and so they made one up. They're like, kids with no eyelids or something, and they give us money. And they found out that about 10% of people will give money to whatever charity you got out front there. And then they made a statement. They said, you're free to refuse, but give us money. They just made a statement about it's totally your choice. 47% gave money. 470% increase just by reminding people you got a choice.
That's interesting.
And this is one of the really important concepts, is that they have a choice. God gave it to them, and how dare we try to pretend it doesn't exist. Right. And if you keep reminding people, that's fine, you don't have to come, you will increase the likelihood. This is just how we're wired. And because we're wired, we resist. You think about when your mom told you were going to clean your room when you were a kid. I know Aaron did. Eric, when you were a kid, you were going to clean your room. You're like, I'm going to go clean my room. Yeah. And then your mom comes and says, hey, go clean your room. You're like, well, I ain't cleaning it now.
Right.
Right? Right? That's what we have this resistance built into us when somebody's trying to persuade us. So there's several kind of helping conversation styles. Get them all pulled up. So real quick, you can be a director, a follower, or a listener, or a guide. And a director is someone who's just telling people what to do and how to do it. Okay? Hey, you need to be saved, and you need to come. Okay? And there's times when that's appropriate. Right. When somebody's asking direction, that's a good time to be a director, right? If the building's on fire and you know the way out, pretty good time. Like, I don't care if you're about your feelings right now. This is follow me.
The exits are here.
Yes, let's get out, right? And that's the one we tend to want to be. We tend to want to be director, and we're going to get back to that. So hang on to that for a minute. Followers, that's a time for this too. The followers they seek to understand, and they don't insert any of their own material. So they're a good listener, and they take interest in what the other person's saying, but they never quite get around to saying anything else, right? So I'm just finding out what you're interested in. I'm listening to you. Oh, that's great. Oh, how's your family? And oh, the family's doing good. That's good. And I'm walking off, right? That's kind of, does that make sense? And so the example you can use here is, if you went on a vacation, so I'm going to tell you what a guide is. Imagine you could take a vacation, you go to another country, and you go to the hotel, and you're like, hey, I got some things in mind I want to do. You show up to your hotel. So you show up to the hotel, and your concierge there is a director. He says, hey, welcome to the hotel. Breakfast is at 6 a.m., so get down here. And we're going to have oatmeal and some fruit, and that's what you get to have. There aren't any choices. That's what you're going to have. And then at 7:30, we're going to go over here, and we're going to go to the yarn museum and explore all the yarn, and we've got your day laid out for you. That's not the vacation most of us want to go on. I know they have some, but if you select one, you've already picked. That's which places you want to go, right? So a follower is you show up to the hotel and you say, hey, we'd like to go someplace nice to eat. We want to go have a nice breakfast. Where can we get some good cinnamon rolls and some coffee? Man, you guys like cinnamon rolls and coffee, huh? Yeah. Yeah, there's some good places that you'll probably find some. Like, I'm not giving you any help. I'm just listening, and I've understood you. And you feel understood. A guide is going to say, well, what are you interested in? What would the hotel? What do you want to do while you're here? Oh, you'd like to go out for a steak dinner? Well, we've got 3 places, and I highly recommend this one because this is. But if that's not kind of your thing, over here they've got seafood as well. So they're listening to what's important to you and giving you some options to choose from. Okay, that's a guide. You see the difference between guiding and directing. Yeah. And a skillful guide is a good listener, but also offers expert advice when it's needed. So it's kind of like we were talking about, Brother Aaron. Like, you're looking for that opportunity to say, oh. This is what you're looking for. Here's where I think you're going to find it. There's something also called the writing reflex, and this is we all have this. We like to tell other people what to do. Whoops, I went too far. We like to tell other people what to do, and if you think you don't, you're wrong. You do. Sister Callie's in here. She's trying to tell me what to do all the time.
I'm trying.
And I don't listen. And it's not that it's wrong, but it's our desire to fix what seems wrong with other people and get them quickly on it. Now, that's not wrong, right? You love them. You want them to be saved.
Yeah, right.
What's wrong with that? If you're a helper, you want to help, right? But we tend to, when that's guiding us, we tend to overuse that directing style, and it doesn't work very well. So, those motivations that led us to evangelize can lead us to overuse that, a pushy style, a directing to tell people what to do. But because when we see other people going down the wrong path, we have a natural desire. If you see somebody about to drive, over a cliff, do you go, gee, oh well, or do you go, stop, hey, you don't want it, but most of the time that's not super effective. So this is just some background. What we're drawing from is something called motivational interviewing. You can look that up. You can get the book on this. I actually kind of recommend it. It's developed by Miller and Rolnick, and back in '83, and it evolved from treatment with people of alcoholism, because they looked at what was going on then, and what we tended to do back then was, hey, you drink too much. You should stop.
Yeah.
You don't want it? Well, you're in denial. And why don't you come back when you realize what a problem you have? And that didn't work very well. Or somebody would be coerced to go into a rehab program. They didn't really want to be there.
Yeah.
They get out, and it's not too long before they're back. Before they go backwards. And they said, really, why aren't we doing better? And they started with that, and then they started realizing that pretty much any behavior follows this track. Okay, this works with anything. So now there's motivational interviewing in healthcare. There's all kinds of publications with this. So why do we need that? Shouldn't people just want to be saved? Shouldn't people just want to have a better life and do better? But what we need to understand is almost always an investment. There's always a reward for your current behavior. Why are people stuck in addictions? Because it relieves my pain for a little while. Why am I invested in my sinful lifestyle? Because I don't know different, but you get something out of it. And if you don't know there's something more, right, you're going to keep doing that. And so we have to understand that there's always something reinforcing the current path somebody's on. No matter what I think everybody in here is a parent. You want your kids or your grandkids to do something different. They start, there's a reward in what they're doing now. You want to help reinforce something different, right? You just tell them not to do it. Well, okay, but that's a director. Yeah. You can get. And so there's a difference, and I don't want to get down too many rabbit trails tonight because we'll never get through everything. But you can. I work with a lot of parents, and I go, you can get your kids to go along. You can get agreement. I'm trying to think of the word I use. what you want is submission. But when you force somebody to do something, like you follow my rules or else. Well, they're just avoiding the negative consequence. They really don't want to do what you want your kids, you want your loved ones to want to do what you're telling them to do. So that when you're not looking, because when you just get, right, they're just going along, the moment you're not looking, guess what they're going to do? What they want to do. I want what they want to do to be what I want them to do, right? And so this is the same thing, right? I want this person to come to church. I want them to be saved, but I want them to do it because that's what they want. Not because I've gotten them to do it or coerce them, or because this is what happens is we start arguing, pleading, coercing people. That doesn't usually lead to lasting change. So if I might convince somebody to come to church, you were sort of heading there in our example, like, hey, I bet, you're trying to push them into it. And I agree with you, brother, and don't get me wrong. If they have that, they come and they have that experience. But what if they don't? That happens, right? Somebody drags their friend into church, they come and they're like,
it probably happens more often than not.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's sometimes a group effort. Like one plants, the other waters.
Mm-hmm.
That brings the increase. And I've had that happen. I've talked to a waitress at a restaurant, left her a church card. A year later, somebody else goes in there and invites her to the same church, and she comes.
Yeah.
She sees me, and she's like, I remember you.
But she
You
came
invited me
because she wanted to come, right? Like you could have been like, maybe I'm overdoing the example, but hey, if you don't come, you're going to go to hell. Or hey, I'll give you 20. Should I use this? I will. There was some discussion, and it used to happen this way, about the Bible studies at the pantry. That there were some folks that are like, we should let people who come to the Bible study go through the line first. And I just was opposed to that.
Yeah.
I was like, no, number one, I don't want somebody there that doesn't really want to be there.
Yeah.
I really, because it's just, they're disruptive. Trust me, they bring their kids and they're running around and they're on their phone and it's just disruptive.
Right.
I want people that want to be there. And I'm like, I don't think we need to coerce people into this. And plus it would have caused other headaches today. And so I've always kind of been opposed to that idea. I get the concept, but I'm like, you don't need to do that. I want them to want to be there, right? Rather than me coercing them or maneuvering somebody. I'm not trying to manipulate anybody. Right. This is what we're trying to avoid. And by the way, nothing I'm talking about is manipulation. It is exactly the opposite of manipulation, actually. Because when you manipulate somebody, you might get them to go along, but you won't get lasting change. It's very unlikely.
Right. They're not sold into it.
You want them to be invested. Yep.
Yeah.
Right? So these things, information, having enough information, that's not enough. It's not a matter of lack of, you want information. I'm not saying don't have good information. Being an expert, that's not enough. Decisions to change are just difficult. And sometimes you don't know what somebody's wrestling with. Maybe they had a really bad experience with church in the past. Yeah. Maybe they've got really crazy. Listen, I walked into church and I was like, are they going to come running out with snakes? What's going on? Well,
Yeah.
That's for real. I didn't make that up. That's really what I was like. I've heard stuff like that. And are they gonna want my money?
Yeah.
These were things I was concerned about. How are they going to treat me?
We're not drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I wasn't drinking anything they were handing out.
Yep.
Bad joke. Too soon? It's basic human nature, like I said, to resist persuasion, especially if I'm ambivalent about changing. So, the motivational interviewing stuff really is based in this idea of there's stages of change. Where we tend to be is at the action stage. When I'm inviting you to come to church, you coming to church is an action step. Or if I'm inviting you to a Bible study, or whatever it is, right? I'm like, hey, you want to do Bible study? That's an action step. Yeah. If they're not ready for it, so pre-contemplation, I'm just real quickly, they're not ready. They're not ready to do anything. They're not thinking about doing anything different. This is why I had that example. You come up to your neighbor, I'm not thinking about going to church, and you come up and like, hey, you want to go to church with me? No. Where do you go from there? Well, you try to convince them, right? No, what I want to do is get them to contemplation. Contemplation is I'm thinking about doing something different than what I'm doing now. And remember, in pre-contemplation, I'm invested. There's something that has me where I'm at doing what I'm doing. I want to get them to thinking. And we're going to talk about this a little bit. If they'll start, you recognize contemplation. It's kind of, we're really mostly going to focus on moving from pre-contemplation to contemplation, because once you get there, it moves real quick. But understand that people go back and forth, and sometimes you've got to be patient and recognize they're not talking about coming to church anymore. They've gone back. I need to recognize that. Don't keep pushing it at them. I've got to get back. Meet them where they're at the stage they're at. Contemplation is I haven't said what I'm going to do, but I'm thinking about doing something. What I'm doing now isn't working. Planning is, this is what I'm going to do. And action is actually doing it. And then maintenance is you're continuing to do it. And then there's argument in my field about termination if that just ends, but probably not. This is where you're really consolidated, though. There's probably a place where you don't have to maintain. I think I'm kind of past maintenance in my attendance of church. Like that's not stopping. Okay. Y'all clear on that? Contemplation is getting ready. Okay, starting to get ready, starting to talk. And okay, so I kind of made up this. I shared this with our outreach team. I think there's stages of conversion, and I made this up. This isn't. You could correct this, but you go from cold. That means I don't even know you.
Yeah.
Right? We've never met. Maybe maybe I see you somewhere. You're the clerk at the grocery store. I don't, but I've never talked to you. That's cold. Okay? We're cold. We don't have any relationship. Then you move to contacted. Like, hey, my name's Neil. What's yours?
Aaron.
Nice to meet you. I have a contact. We make 80 contacts a week, at least. Right? Every Saturday. This is what it's about. It's making contacts. And then we go from there to building connection. Right? We've been talking about that already. But the reason you just keep in mind, where am I at with this person? We've got connection. Okay, and then I said coming. They're coming to church. Now, or they're coming to a Bible study. And eventually, that should move to the next stage of being converted. Right? Sometimes they go, I want to be baptized. You teach them a Bible study, like, I want to be baptized. They're not coming to church. All right. But we want to get there to committed. That's the goal, right? You make disciples. This is where they're a disciple. They're really a disciple, and they're ready to be making disciples. I'm committed. I'm in. Right? Some of the core principles: expressing empathy. This is. We may spend the rest of the time talking about it. Understanding people where they're at. Reflecting emotion and not. You don't have to agree to express empathy. Right? You ever met somebody and I don't know, they lost their favorite baseball player, signed a baseball, and they lost it, and they're having a meltdown, or, I might not agree that it's a big deal, but I can agree that you're really upset. Like that's, you get what I'm saying? I'm not, we want to develop discrepancy. And now what that means is, remember I've used that word ambivalence? Ambivalence is wanting to change but not wanting to change. It literally means two arms, right? Valence is an arm. It's two, well, on the one hand I want to do this, but on the other hand I want to do this. Okay? Rolling with resistance. If they're resisting, you're not like, well, let me know when you get your head right. Or you stick it in there. You actually can use the resistance. You begin to understand, like, okay, why are they resistant? Well, let's talk about that. And you support self-efficacy. This is that reminding them they have a choice and they can do what they want and they have the power to, they can make this, they can do this. They may say, well, my family would really be mad at me if I started coming to your church. Okay? That's a place where I might have to support you can do this. You're going to make it. Okay? When we talk about expressing empathy, you can remember ORS. I really should have printed this off. I failed in that. Using open questions. So open questions call for more than a yes or no answer. Hey, do you want to come to church with me? No. Right? Hey, where did we go from there?
Right.
You're sort of stuck. Like now, okay, why not? I'm going to show you why that's exactly the path you don't want to go down. Open question is how would you feel about coming to church? Like, so now you're talking, well, I don't know, I don't think I'd really like that. And we're talking about some things. And rather than just yes or no, we're opening up conversation. Why? Because I want to understand this person.
Right.
I want to know where they're at.
Why don't they want to come to church?
I don't actually want to talk about that a whole lot.
I know, but you want to try to figure that out.
Yeah, I want to know what the
them.
resistance and what are they invested in now? Well, I like watching the football game, and I don't have to give up my football.
Right.
So, or I like playing golf on Sundays.
And to some people, that's a real answer.
It is. I've heard all these. So the goal is to get the person to talk about what is on their mind. You're trying to find out. So this is a take home right here. You are trying to find out what matters to this person. Whoever you're talking, what really matters to them. I want my I got kids, and maybe they're really invested and they talk a lot about their kids. Well, let's talk about your kids. What kind of world are they living in? And what do you think about what's going on? These are open-ended questions, right? Don't you think your kids should be coming to church? Well, no, right? No, let's just talk about, hey, you're really interested, so I'm getting to know you. There's affirmations. And the closed questions tend to be what's on my mind. So here's a good open-ended question. How are things going, Aaron?
They're going great.
Okay, right? Well, what's going good for you? What's going great? Yeah, and you see, that's an open-ended question. You can start telling me what's going on rather than me asking what's on my mind. How do you feel about it? Even my question before, how do you feel about coming to church? Probably that's me bringing my agenda. What's on your agenda? Yeah. And the closed questions tend to be about what's on your mind. So affirmations, that is anything positive you can point out. Okay, you really care a lot about your family. You're really asking a lot of questions about this, or you were successful in changing this in the past. Whatever. You're just. It takes a lot of courage. It would take a lot of courage for you to tell me about your bad habit that or whatever, or your marriage problem or something like that. Reflections. That's probably the most important skill. That is understanding what the person is thinking and feeling and saying it back to them. And you just you ask a lot of questions and then you just say it back. It's just that simple. Yeah, your kids are really important. And there's different ways of doing this. It's not passive. You're making a lot more statements than you are asking questions, but it helps you by seeing the world through this other person's eyes. Okay, you're reflecting, and when you get the reflection wrong, like you say, well, you really, I don't know, your kids are really, your job is super important to you. No, really it isn't. I just do it because okay, well, you're still, right? I'm still learning about you. You're still telling me, people don't get mad when you're asking questions and reflecting back what they're saying. It helps by letting people know, everybody wants to be heard. This is a basic human need. We all want to be heard. And in summaries is it really just a long reflection of more than one statement. So think about how you've been having this conversation, and here's the things. Maybe you've taken notes, or you've been talking to your neighbor, and they're like, well, I'm not sure what I believe. And in the course of conversation, these are the things that you heard them say. I had a really bad experience with church in the past. I missed the connection I felt with people in church. I want my children to know about God. I don't want a strict set of rules or guilt trips. And my friend says preachers are just trying to get your money. And I always feel like something is missing in my life. So I've heard all these things. So now just that you could summarize that. Like, well, there's some things that you really liked about church, and you miss the connection, but you don't really trust what it's really all about. And see what I'm saying? You can summarize. So what the value here is you're trying to create a safe and non-judgmental space for conversation, for dialogue, right? I'm not judging you. This is what most people, when you're trying to evangelize, the biggest hurdle probably is they think you're judging them. You're telling me something wrong with me, something wrong in my life, and who are you? Yeah. What's going so great for you, right? You're going to get resistance. So I got 10 minutes. We want to develop discrepancy. So basically, a lot of this is creating what's called cognitive dissonance, which is what I believe doesn't fit the reality that I've been presented. Right? So I don't believe people get healed, and then I get healed. That's cognitive dissonance. I've got to either make this is what we tend to do, is bend the reality to fit what we believe, what we want to believe, or we shift our beliefs. Right? So experiences matter. So what we want to help gently challenge people's beliefs or maybe behaviors that are incongruent with what they say they believe. And this is where the open-ended questions come in. It helps people explore their own thoughts and feelings. You're just exploring what matters to this person. Does that make sense? Like, I'm not trying to insert my agenda. I'm just asking you. And what I'm trying to do, this is moving people from that pre-contemplation to contemplation. I'm just trying to point out how what you're doing now is affecting what you say is really important to you. Does that make sense? And so what I'm trying to do is create ambivalence. That's developing discrepancy. Is the same. Another phrase for that is creating that ambivalence. Like, well, you say that I just drew a blank on. On one hand, you say you want your kids to have a solid understanding of things in the world. You want them to grow up in a good environment and have good influences. But on the other hand, you're taking them to your bar league softball game with you, right? That's not compatible things. I didn't judge you on that. You're saying this is really, that's probably not the best example, but hopefully that's making sense. You create some ambivalence so that they can say, well, you say you don't want to come to church, but you just moved to town, you're trying to make some more connection, right? On one hand, you just want to kind of watch the football game, but on the other hand, I'd really like to get to know people. Right? So, create ambivalence. We don't want to stay with the ambivalence. We actually want to challenge it. We bring it up and we point it out, especially when somebody is already expressing it. Because ambivalence leads to procrastination. Like, I'm just going to stick with what I'm doing, and I'm going to put it off. And that's when we start thinking, well, there's resistance. When you feel resistance, there's probably ambivalence. And our goal then is to help point it out. And it's really a natural state of being unsure about changing. And what we're trying to do, and this is the skills we're trying to bring, is elicit a person's own intrinsic, internal motivation for change, as opposed to using my motivation for you to change. Y'all good? You with me so far? We want to resolve the ambivalence. We want to create it, but show it. Maybe I shouldn't say creating it. We want to point it out. Like, you're saying these two things are important to you, but they're in conflict, and then help it. I won't go through this list, but these are some things. When you find you're directing or telling them, or if you're warning, well, your kids are going to go to hell, right? That is not going to help you reflect. Okay, this is not building the relationship. You're persuading. Well, how can you think this, right? Persuading with logic. That's a pretty dumb idea. Like, why can't you see that this is better, right? Arguing, telling people what they should do. You start getting into some of these things, right?
It needs to be taught to new converts.
What's that?
I did every single one of those.
Yeah, right? And you think you're doing the right thing, and you're doing it with the right motivation. That's what I said. I was trying to get at earlier. The things that led you to be it there got you doing that stuff. So, remember I said rolling with resistance is one of our core things here. Discord comes up. Discord is happening when there's interrupting or arguing. There's negativity and blaming and disagreement in your conversation. I don't mean you're talking about differences. I mean there's disagreement. Like, you guys, that's just stupid stuff. Y'all are crazy. Disagreement. Ignoring, withdrawing. The person is just blowing you off, right? There's discord. And how about there's sarcasm and name calling? You're heading down the wrong track. Or they change the subject, or they just kind of keep every answer is I don't know, right? And there are times you have to recognize when the resistance is winning. That means you feel like you're fighting or arguing with that person, and you're not getting anywhere. Okay? Your person is giving you a lot of yes, but. Yeah, but. Your posture is more tense than theirs. Right? Pay attention to your muscle tension. I'm telling you. You're like, oh, resistance is winning. You're working harder. Sister Ellen will tell you, I've been teaching this for a long time. When you're working hard, every relationship's like a rowboat. You got to be trying to go to the same place, and you got to row equally hard. And when you're rowing harder than they are, you go around in circles and yell at each other. Doesn't work. And so, if you're working harder than they are, you're just going to be frustrated. Or how about this one? You feel like you feel compelled to say we as you're discussing them. They're not you, all right? We really need to. No. You start, and again, things like frustration and feeling incompetent come up. Let me jump ahead. And usually that resistance has come up because we've gotten ahead. Remember those stages of change, right? We've gotten ahead of where their readiness is. That's when the resistance comes up. And so we just need to move back. Like, oh, they aren't thinking about this, and so I need to move back. Or we were right at action. We were getting ready to go to church, and then they moved back to contemplation. I'm not sure. The ambivalence came back up. That's okay. That's just normal. It's an expected part of this process, and we need to trust the process. Part of what they teach in the motivational interviewing stuff is an unhurried mindset. I'm in no hurry. I'm just going to keep talking. I'm just going to keep connecting. And we go back to using those ORS skills. Another 5 minutes. We want to support. I went too fast. No, I didn't. Sorry, these aren't coming up the way I want them to come up. PACE is another. A lot of these little memory devices. Partnership. We want to work collaboratively and avoid being the expert. Like I know what you really need in your life. Who made you the expert in my life? Right? Acceptance. Respect their autonomy. They have a choice. They can walk away from God. They can not want to live for God, and I can still love them. Right? But we also respect that they have strengths and there's potential and their perspective. You didn't live their life. You don't know what they've been through. Compassion, keeping their interest in mind, loving them. Evocation is keeping. A lot of times and we aren't going to have time to get into this. I knew this was going to happen. Evocation is drawing ideas out of them. I'm trying to get you to tell me why you want to come to church, or why you want to get into Bible study, why you want to be saved. That's really what the aim of this is. Not for me to tell you why you need to be saved. I want you to tell me. And it's not manipulation. Because you're going to tell me why, based on what you really care about, that next step, whatever it is important to you. We engage people. That's establishing a relationship. We talked about that. And focusing is, there's 3 styles. It's kind of like it's the directing, following, and guiding. And they're, again, directioning is okay once they're in that action phase, or they're really thinking, what do I do? Right? Men and brethren, what should we do? Peter said, here's what you do. Right. He didn't lead with that.
Right.
He just said, hey, all the stuff that you believe? Here it is.
Yeah.
And they went, and the ones that believed said, well, what do we do? Here's what you do. Right? He became a director. Following is focusing on that person's priorities, whatever they are. You're trying to understand their agenda and trying to allow the direction and momentum and content of the conversation to follow that appropriately, right? And this can enhance the engagement, but that might not move toward change. So and then we talked about guiding, right? That's listening and then looking for the opportunities it's finding that horizon, it's finding that middle between directing and listening and tolerating the uncertainty. You're looking for their strength. You're looking for what they value. And I'm just going to blast past some of this. And like I said, I created this for a much longer time period. So again, evoking is eliciting a person's own motivation for change, and you're eliciting change talk. Change talk is speech that talks about movement in the direction of doing something new. So it sounds like this. I want this, or the reasons I want to do this or this, or I wish, or this would solve, if I was involved in church, or if I was living for God, you're looking for them to talk about why they want to do the next step. You want to avoid what's called sustained talk. That's a person, that's speech that favors staying in the same place. Let's see. And I really just want to, I don't want to go long here, but so when we eliciting change talk is like, why do you want to know more about Jesus? See, we heard these questions before about why don't you want to come to church? I want to talk about why you do. Why do you want to be saved? Why do you think you want to be saved? Again, gather information, find out what's really important, and say, and then you have to figure out how does what they need, how does their salvation match up to what they say is important to them, or coming to God, whatever that next step is, match what they say is important to them. I know I'm redundant, but it's not complicated. But there's just some subtle ways, and I just wanted to kind of revisit our conversation earlier, Aaron. What would be your first step? What do you think the next thing should be? Right? Give them a menu of options. That's another thing I don't have in this presentation, but giving people, you could do this. You could come to church. You could do a Bible study. You could do a group Bible study. You could, here's some teaching online that I could share with you. Give them some things that let them choose.
Tell them what God's done for you.
Yes. Oh yeah, definitely share your testimony. Okay, so we're talking about pre-contemplators. What concerns you about where you're at? What problems have you had from what you're doing now? What is there about what you're doing now that others might see as a concern? What ways does this concern you? Right? I want you to tell me what you see wrong with your current situation. How does this affect your life? How is whatever... your only goal at this stage is to move them into thinking about change. Because when they do intrinsic motivation, that's way more powerful and long-lasting. It gives people a sense of mastery and purpose and autonomy. Right? If your kids say, Mom, I just want to go to church. Oh, that's a great thing to hear, isn't it? Right? You're not like, come on, you gotta go. There's a difference. Okay, so here's okay. So Aaron, you're talking to your neighbor again. Real quick, are we all right if I go like 5 minutes? Okay, Jeff Arnold, 5 minutes. And this is a great thing. We're talking about, so we've gotten some information. We have a relationship. You've gotten to know me a little bit, and you've got some ambivalence. Okay, but you've seen your window of opportunity. So confidence rulers or importance rulers. So the reason people stay in pre-contemplation is they either don't think they need to do something different or they don't think they can. Okay, so for our purposes, importance is probably more likely. So you've talked to me about coming to a Bible study. We're going to set up, and you say, Thursday I'd like to come. So on a scale, I want you to ask me these questions on a scale, and then follow it up in any way you want. On a scale of 0 to 10, how important is it for you, or how likely is it you're going to show up? That you're going to meet me for Bible study Thursday? So go ahead, and you can.
On a scale of 0 to 10, how important is it for you to attend a weekly Bible study?
How about how likely? How likely
are you to attend a weekly Bible study at my house? Dinner provided.
6.
6? It's great.
So go.
Well, what are you doing this Thursday?
Well, I might come to that.
Are you reticent in coming this Thursday? We've got a bunch of people coming over.
Maybe.
We got you a spot saved.
Maybe.
Great. Okay.
Anybody else got how would you want to follow that up?
Well, hey, 6 o'clock.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
From 6 to 9, we're all getting together.
Okay.
Our Bible
Anybody
study.
else? And you got a question you want to ask to follow up with that? Go ahead.
I have a question. I think to come out and ask somebody that would be kind of...
The setup is we've already established some relationship.
Yeah.
We've been talking about it. I'm expressing some interest, but I'm not sure. I've got the ambivalence, and you're taking your shot and you're making an invitation.
Yeah.
Okay? And so what most people do is after they say 0 to 10, 6. Okay, well, why isn't it a 10? How can I get you to like 9 or 10? Because I want you at 10, right? So why isn't it 9 or 10? Well, I got some other things. I'm really not sure about this, man. Right? That's our natural tendency. Is usually
But from our previous conversation, we were like, well, I'm just not really interested in it. I just really don't like the whole thing.
Right. So what are we talking about?
If you're at a 6 for a Bible study, I'll take that.
Okay, but I'm going to show you how to get better. How to move it up. Want to know how to move it up? Because what did we talk about before? We don't want to talk about. I'm trying to avoid talking about why they don't want to do it. I want to avoid that conversation, that talk all I can. So, Eric, give me the same number, okay? You're not sure, and I want you to really be somebody that's ambivalent. You're in the middle somewhere. 0 to 10. Hey, we've been talking about this Bible study. So 0 to 10. How likely is you going to show up?
4.
4. Why isn't it a 0 or a 1?
Consider it going. I mean,
What?
sounds interesting.
It sounds interesting to you?
Yeah.
What sounds interesting? What are we talking about? Why he wants to go.
Yeah.
That needle is moving up.
Yeah.
I think any number is an option to go to where Brother Aaron was saying was still having that door open.
Yeah, no.
Because there's still a chance.
Yeah, there's still a chance. But what I'm trying to help you do is be more effective.
Right.
Right?
Right.
If you can get somebody to keep talking about why they want to do it, does that make sense? You got way more. They're way more likely to do it because I'm hammering home why you think this is important, and that number is going to move up as we talk about why you want to do it.
I mean, but do you want to do that right away? Is that what you
No.
Yeah,
This is
after a while.
we've gotten some change talk. We've found that ambivalence.
We've established a basis.
We've already, that was our scenario. Is we've built a relationship. We've had some conversation. I've expressed some openness.
But even at that point, like, is it fair to question why their thing isn't?
I'm not asking why they don't want to go. I'm asking why they do. And the reason you do that is you want it to have change talk every time. Does that make sense? Like, you're not judging.
It's just a number though. So if somebody says, what?
Well, you could say
I'm having a Bible study this Thursday, 6 o'clock. You guys want to come?
Okay, so you've done that 10 times and they haven't showed up. Okay, I'm trying to get that. You're trying to move we're trying to resolve the ambivalence, right? They're like, I might show, I might not, right? I might go.
Well, we're going to have the meeting whether you're there or not. So I mean,
okay, well, let's say it's
I'm not going to say that to.
Right.
Right. No, but I'm just saying, you want to increase the likelihood they show
Keep
up.
asking. At some point, they're going to get tired of you asking. And
Yeah, see, but you don't need to wear them out. I mean, you can be patient, but I'm saying you can, and you don't have to use this phrase. I'm just saying, the idea is to point the conversation to why do I want to come?
So if we were using that phrase, would it be, if we were using that phrase and you were like, listen, Aaron,
maybe
this is the way to ask him.
phrase.
And I say, well, what can I do to get you to a 10?
Yeah.
What can I
That's
do to
okay.
get you to a 10?
That's okay.
If you're at a 6, I need 4 more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, what would
Get you
make
a
it
10.
more like that's fair. That's
Yeah.
fine, yeah. Because then they're talking about what matters to them. But a lot of times you'll get I don't know. So if I say you're up at a 6, okay, well what pushed it up to 6?
Yeah.
Right? And you're going to tell me, well, some of the things you said made some sense, and I'm curious about. I would like to learn. Okay, so now we're talking. I just want to it's just reinforcing what they've already expressed interest in, and their own. You're reinforcing their own motivation, rather than talking about what their ambivalence. I want to lead them down this path, not the staying where they're at. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
One more thing, real quick. This is a good one too. This is called the decisional balance. And if you get in touch with me, I'll give you a copy of this. But it's basically 4 squares. There's what's going on now. That's status quo. And whatever we're proposing, that next step, the change is. Coming to Bible study, going to church, whatever. Being baptized. Okay, what are some good things about this is what you start with. Number 1. So what do you like about what's going on right now? Well, right. And I wish I had more time to go through it. Some not so good things. What are some things you don't like? You know what? What do you not like about not being in church? There's some things that you feel like, and so they're going to tell, and you're asking them, I'm not trying to tell them, I'm asking questions. What are some things you might not like about going to church? Well, I got to get up, I got in the morning on Sunday, I like to sleep in, I miss the football game, I miss golf tournaments, and people are afraid to talk about that. But then I say, what do you think might be some good things? I've steered the direction of the conversation towards why they think it's good to do. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. Go ahead.
I have an issue.
Go ahead.
Like for me, I kind of look at like coming to the Lord almost like AA. Like you have to know that you're an addict to know that you need help. Just like you have to realize that you're a sinner to know that you need Jesus.
Right.
So like when I'm witnessing to people, my goal isn't to get them to come to church. My goal is to show them how badly they need Jesus in their life before anything else.
Yeah.
And once they understand that they're a sinner and they need a savior and they need more than what they're getting, then I start going with the church advice. It's Jesus.
Take it out. Okay, so
Yeah.
I've been using coming to church.
Yeah.
Insert having a relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
Why do you want to have a relationship with Jesus?
Because I was an atheist before this, and I've been to all these different churches my entire life. I always went, friends invited me, I'd go to just comply and get it over with. I've been saved 10 times. Yes, I accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior.
Sure.
And I left every time the same. But it wasn't until I realized I needed Jesus.
So here's how I would so what are some good things? What are some things you like about being an atheist? What's some good things about that?
Yeah.
What are some things you don't like? And maybe again, they may say nothing, What are some not so... Now, this is kind of like, you got to insert this at the right time, right? This isn't the first... we've already gotten a little bit of conversation, but I'm trying to find out what are some things you like and don't like about where you're at.
Yeah.
And what do you think might be some not so good things about having a relationship with Jesus? That's a scary conversation, right? You think you don't want to talk about it, but it's already on their mind. Let's just talk about it. And I'm not going to say anything about it. I'm going to let them say it. I get it. And I'm going to reflect. I'm going to use that empathy. Like, I get it. You think you have to give up a lot of stuff, right? There's a lot of rules to follow. And nobody wants a lot of rules and being told what to do. I get that, right? I'm just going to honor that, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not arguing. I'm not making no argument. Well, what do you think some good things might be about having a relationship with Jesus? Do you think there's some good things? And if they start talking about that, this is what I end. My point is, that's where I always want to end my conversation. I don't want to talk about. I don't want to be in box number 1, talking about what's good now or not, or in box number 3. I want to end in box number 4. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for the time. I know it's a little rushed and fast. There's a lot there. I think we got to just about everything. Basically, don't let your eagerness for their change to get ahead of theirs. Right.
Yep.
Celebrate, affirm everything, every step in the right direction, and talk a little less than they do. Ask a lot of questions.